Chapter 1. The Calm Before the Storm. The massive Vaxar mothership, an imposing and sleek vessel that could obliterate entire planets with a mere thought, hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere. Aboard the flagship, Captain Nixun stood before the holographic projection of the planet below, his 6 limbs folded across his chest, his emerald scales shimmering under the artificial lighting of the command room. He wasn't used to this unease. The Vaxar had conquered hundreds of planets, laid waste to civilizations, and brought entire solar systems to their knees. But Earth remained untouched, an anomaly in the vast galactic history of war and conquest. His second-in-command, Chris, a reptilian alien with translucent wings, hovered beside him. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the low light. "Why do you think they haven't attacked, Captain?" she asked, her voice sharp yet filled with curiosity. "The planet is defenseless, it's primitive." Nixon's mandibles clicked as he processed her words. Earth was an outlier. No technological advancements, no planetary shields, no fleet of warships. Despite its vulnerability, the galaxy's most powerful empires had ignored Earth. It didn't make sense. "I've read the reports," Nixon replied, his voice low and contemplative. "But there's something off about this world. Something wrong." "Wrong?" Chris raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Nixon turned his gaze to the planet below. "We'll find out ourselves." With a simple command, the mothership began its descent toward Earth. The tension in the command room was palpable as the crew prepared for their first direct encounter with the enigmatic planet. Nixon wasn't sure what to expect, but one thing was certain. They would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The ship touched down in a secluded forest outside a sprawling city. Tall, twisted trees loomed overhead, and the atmosphere smelled of damp earth and fresh foliage. Nixon stepped out of the airlock, flanked by 3 of his most trusted officers: Chris, Jules, an armored alien with glowing red eyes, and Rax, a hulking brute with skin as hard as stone. The forest was quiet, too quiet. There were no birds singing, no animals scurrying, just an eerie silence that hung in the air like a thick fog. Nixon's 6 eyes scanned the environment, his instincts alert. "We stay together," Nixon ordered, his voice cold. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The 4 Vaxar aliens moved in tight formation, each step taken with precision. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they began to notice something strange. The trees seemed to bend and shift, as if they were alive, watching them. The air hummed with a low frequency, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make Chris uneasy. "There's something here," she whispered, her wings twitching in agitation. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a loud growl echoed through the forest, shaking the leaves from the trees. It was a deep, primal sound that sent a chill down their spines. Nixon held up a hand, signaling his team to halt. Out of the shadows, a massive creature emerged. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its body was a grotesque amalgamation of organic and mechanical parts, with cybernetic limbs and glowing red eyes that burned with an ancient intelligence. The creature's growl became louder as it advanced toward them, its claws scraping the ground. Nixon stepped forward, his muscles tensing. "This is no simple beast," he muttered under his breath. Chris raised her weapons, her wings folding tightly against her body. "Captain, we need to retreat. That thing is—" Before she could finish her sentence, the creature lunged with incredible speed. Its claws tore through the air, aiming for Nixon's chest. But the captain was faster, dodging the strike with a twist of his body. The creature's claws scraped across his armor, leaving sparks in their wake. "We fight," Nixon growled, his voice low and filled with fury. "We have no choice." The Vaxar crew responded in unison, their weapons blazing to life. Rax charged forward with his massive fists, striking the creature in the side with the force of a freight train. Jules unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one hitting the creature's metallic body and sending sparks flying. The creature recoiled, its glowing eyes narrowing. It opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. A shrill scream erupted from its throat, and suddenly the ground beneath them seemed to come alive. Vines erupted from the earth, ensnaring the Vaxar crew, pulling them toward the creature. Nixon's heart raced. "It's not just a monster," he said between gritted teeth. "It's a guardian." The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Earth wasn't defenseless at all. It had been protected by something far more powerful than any weapon they had ever encountered. Chapter 2. The Hidden Guardians. The fight escalated quickly. The Vaxar crew struggled against the vines, their weapons discharging energy blasts into the forest with little effect. The creature continued its assault, swiping at them with mechanical claws and letting out an eerie, disembodied roar. Chris managed to break free from the vines, her wings beating furiously as she darted upward, trying to get a better vantage point. "Captain, we can't win this. We need to fall back." But Nixun was determined. "We're not leaving until we understand what we're up against." With a swift motion, Nixun unleashed a powerful blast from his arm cannon, hitting the creature square in the chest. The force of the shot staggered the monster, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The creature retaliated with a burst of energy that sent Nixun crashing to the ground. Just as the creature was about to strike again, a strange hum filled the air, more pronounced now. It seemed to be coming from the very ground beneath them. The creature froze, its eyes widening in fear. From the depths of the forest, a new presence appeared. A massive, ethereal figure, glowing with an otherworldly light, stepped forward. It was tall, towering over the trees, with its body made of shimmering light and pulsating energy. The creature, the guardian of Earth, bowed before this new entity. "Leave this planet, invaders!" The ethereal being's voice echoed in their minds, its tone ancient and powerful. "You do not understand what you are dealing with." The Vaxar crew stood frozen, their weapons lowered as the being addressed them. Nixun took a deep breath. "Who are you?" "I am Ilarion, one of the guardians of Earth," the entity replied. "This world is not defenseless. It is protected by the ancient forces that have shaped the universe itself. No one can conquer Earth." Jewel, still recovering from the battle, muttered, "What do you mean?" "The planet is primitive. It doesn't have the technology to defend itself." Ilarion's radiant eyes turned toward Jewel. "You misunderstand. Earth's defenses are not physical. This world has a power older than your empire, a power that transcends technology and weapons." The revelation hit like a shockwave. The planet itself, Earth, was a living, breathing entity, protected by beings far beyond the comprehension of the Vaxar. "You have no place here," Ilarion continued, its voice now resonating with the raw power of the cosmos. "The creatures you have faced are but a small part of Earth's guardians. Leave now, or face the wrath of the planet itself." Nixun stood in stunned silence. He had come to conquer, but what he had encountered was far greater than any force he had ever known. The power of Earth was not just in its physical defenses, but in its very essence, a force that the galaxy could not and would not comprehend. For the first time in his life, Nixun felt a deep, primal fear. He had underestimated Earth, and now he would have to face the consequences. Chapter 3. The Power of Earth. The words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, Nixon's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. The guardians of Earth, the creatures, and now this powerful entity, Ilarion, all seemed to stand as one, an impenetrable wall between the Vaxar and their mission. "We didn't come to conquer," Nixon began, his voice steady but filled with an edge of uncertainty. "We came to understand." Ilarion's glowing eyes regarded him for a long moment. The silence was suffocating, as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Then, with a wave of its hand, the vines that had bound the Vaxar to the ground receded, and the creature they had fought was drawn back into the shadows of the forest. There is nothing to understand. Ilarian's voice resonated within their minds. You are too small, too limited, to grasp the nature of Earth's existence. It is not a planet to be conquered. It is a sanctuary. Nixon's crew exchanged nervous glances. Chris hovered close to him, her wings twitching with nervous energy. "Captain, we need to get back to the ship," she whispered. "We can't fight this, whatever it is." But Nixon wasn't sure. Something in Ilarian's presence made him feel insignificant, as though he were standing in the presence of a force far older and more powerful than anything the Vaxar had ever encountered. His instincts, usually unwavering and full of bravado, faltered. "You do not understand," Ilarian continued, its voice soft but firm. "This world holds secrets beyond the comprehension of your kind. Earth is connected to the pulse of the universe itself. Its very core is the nexus of life across galaxies, and its protectors are as old as the stars." The trees around them seemed to hum with energy, and the air thickened, as though it, too, was alive. Nixon felt it then, a low vibration deep in his chest. It was as though the planet itself was alive, resonating with an ancient primal force. It was clear now that Earth wasn't just any world. It was something far more precious, something that could never be taken or controlled. The Guardian, sensing Nixon's thoughts, spoke again. "It is not your place to claim Earth. It will remain untouched by your kind. Leave now, or suffer the consequences." The tension was unbearable. Nixon was a captain, a conqueror. But this was something else entirely. No weapons, no ships, no armies would ever be enough to defeat the force that stood before them. Earth had already won. "Understood," Nixon said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "We leave." With a heavy heart, Nixon turned his back on the Guardian and began to walk toward the mothership. The others followed, but each step felt heavier than the last. This wasn't the end they had imagined when they first set foot on Earth. It was a defeat unlike any they had ever known. But just as they reached the ship, a tremor ran through the ground once more. The air hummed with an almost violent intensity. "No," Chris gasped, her eyes wide with terror. "It's not over." Chapter 4. The Wrath of Earth. Before they could react, the ground split open beneath them, sending them tumbling into the darkness below. The mothership, still anchored in the forest, seemed to tremble under the immense pressure from the planet's shifting terrain. Panic swept through the Vaxar crew as they scrambled to regain their footing, but the world around them was changing too fast. Nixun barely had time to react before he was swallowed by the ground, falling into an underground chasm that seemed to stretch for miles. The others followed, and together, they found themselves in an ancient subterranean chamber, the walls of which pulsed with a glowing energy. At the heart of the chamber stood a colossal stone obelisk, covered in intricate runes and glowing symbols. The air inside the chamber was thick with power, the energy almost suffocating. Nixon could feel the planet itself pushing against him, trying to make him understand its power, its depth. "You shouldn't have come," a deep voice boomed from the shadows. It wasn't Ilarian this time, but something much darker, much older. The voice seemed to echo from the stone, from the very walls of the chamber itself. It was the voice of the planet. Nixon and his crew were frozen in place as the walls around them began to vibrate, the stone obelisk crackling with an intense, overwhelming energy. The ground beneath them shifted again, and enormous roots, far larger than any they had seen before, burst forth from the earth, wrapping around them like massive serpents. Rax grunted as one of the roots squeezed him, tightening its grip until his stone-like skin began to crack. "We're trapped!" he roared. The ground trembled, and a pulse of energy shot through the chamber, pushing the Vaxar to the ground. Nixon tried to resist the crushing force, but it was like fighting against a storm. The planet was fighting back, pushing them down into the dirt, into Chapter 5. The decision. The roots receded once more, allowing the Vaxar to stand, but Nixun could feel the weight of their decision pressing down on him. Earth had not only defended itself, it had displayed a power that none of the Vaxar could fathom. This was no ordinary planet. Earth had been a secret all along, one that the universe had kept hidden for eons. But now Nixun realized that he could never return to his people with the same confidence he had once held. Earth was a place of unimaginable power, and it was not to be trifled with. He had seen it firsthand. The Guardians, the planet's pulse, the creatures that protected it. All of it spoke to something ancient, something far beyond the Vaxar's understanding. "We will leave," Nixun said, his voice steady but filled with an undertone of reverence. "We will tell no one. Earth is beyond us." As he and his crew ascended from the depths of the planet, they could feel the pressure lifting. The air was lighter, as if Earth was allowing them to go. But Nixun knew that the true cost of their invasion had yet to be paid. Earth had shown them mercy, but that mercy was not guaranteed for the future. As the Vaxar ship lifted from the ground and soared into the vast expanse of space, Nixon's mind wandered to the vast, unknown power of the planet below. Earth was not a world to conquer. It was a world that would always defend itself. And for the first time in his life, Nixun understood what true power really was. Chapter 6. The Warnings of the Galaxy. As the mothership pulled away from Earth's atmosphere, Nixon's heart still pounded with the realization of what they had just witnessed. Earth was not just a planet, it was a force that had been silently watching the galaxy, waiting for those who would try to exploit it. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before them, but Nixun knew that what they had discovered would change everything. Earth had never been vulnerable. It had been watching, waiting, and it would not allow any civilization to harm it again. "We can't go back to the Empire," Chris said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. "They'll never believe what we've seen." "They don't need to believe it," Nixun replied quietly, his voice filled with a new kind of resolve. "But Earth will always be protected, and if anyone dares to challenge that, they will be met with more than they can handle." The crew remained silent as the ship moved deeper into space. The memory of the underground chamber, of the power of the planet, haunted them all. And though Nixun was a captain, a conqueror by nature, he now understood that some worlds were beyond the reach of conquest. As they sped toward the stars, Nixun couldn't shake the feeling that Earth had only just begun to reveal its true power. And no one, not even the mightiest empire, could ever challenge that. Chapter 7. The Galactic Watcher. The Vaxar mothership hurtled through the cosmos, far away from Earth's atmosphere, but even in the deep, cold void of space, Nixun couldn't shake the overwhelming presence of the planet. Earth's power pulsed through his thoughts, an indelible force that lingered long after the planet had disappeared from view. His crew, usually so certain of their place in the universe, had fallen silent in the aftermath of their encounter. Chris, Jules, Rax, all of them were still processing the encounter. They had seen creatures born from the very essence of the planet itself, an energy older than the stars, and now they were returning to their home galaxy with a story that no one would believe. Nixun, however, had never been one to doubt his instincts. They had been trained to conquer, to dominate, to bring entire civilizations to their knees. But Earth was something else, a paradox, a riddle wrapped in a shroud of mystery. He had seen it firsthand, and now he knew what he had to do. "I want a full report," Nixun ordered, his voice sharp, but there was a weight to it, a sense of finality. "Everything we know about Earth and the Guardians. Analyze every piece of data we gathered. We'll need this if we're to warn the Empire." Jules, who had been unusually quiet, stood and approached Nixun. His red eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the ship's control room. "Captain, we need to face the reality here," Jules said, his voice low. The Empire is not going to let this go. They will demand a full-scale assault on Earth. The galaxy is at war, and they will see Earth as an obstacle, not a sanctuary. Then they will fail, Nixon said firmly, his 6 eyes narrowing. And if they do, they will learn the same lesson we just did. Earth cannot be conquered. Chris, her wings folding nervously at her back, spoke next. Captain, if we go back to the Empire with nothing but a vague report about Earth's power, we'll be marked as failures. And what if they don't listen to us? What if they send another fleet, one with more strength? Then they will learn the hard way, Nixon replied, his voice hard. No one can touch Earth, and if the Empire won't believe us, we'll make them. The ship hummed with the sound of the engines, its course set for the heart of the galaxy. But even as they neared the spaceport, Nixon felt a gnawing unease. What if Earth wasn't the only secret? What if there were other places like it, protected by forces far beyond their understanding? In the distance, the familiar outline of their homeworld, a massive space station orbiting a dying star, came into view. The Empire. It had always felt like home to Nixon, but now it felt hollow, as if the truth of what he had witnessed on Earth had stripped away the grandeur and left only emptiness. We'll need to be careful how we present this information, Chris warned, her voice tinged with caution. We can't risk offending the wrong people. I'll handle it, Nixon replied. We'll present it as a warning. The Empire won't want to challenge Earth, not after what we've seen. But deep down, Nixon knew the truth. The Empire had never backed down from a challenge, and Earth's power was a challenge they would never understand. As the mothership entered the atmosphere of the space station, Nixon looked out at the vast expanse of stars, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing in on him. He had always believed that the Vaxar were invincible, but Earth had proven him wrong, and now he would have to live with the knowledge that some powers were far beyond their reach. They landed at the docking bay, and as the airlock hissed open, Nixon and his crew stepped out onto the metallic surface of the space station. The bustling station was alive with activity. Diplomats, traders, and soldiers moved through the corridors, but Nixon couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. He could feel the presence of the galaxy, the weight of the hundreds of civilizations that had risen and fallen in the wake of the Vaxar's conquests. But he also felt the echo of Earth's guardians, standing between them and the rest of the universe. They weren't just defending Earth, they were watching, waiting. We need to speak to the Council, Nixon said to his crew, and when we do, we'll make sure they understand. Earth is not a threat to us, but it's a warning. The galaxy is changing. Chris nodded. And if they don't listen, then we'll be ready for whatever comes next. Nixon turned toward the council chambers, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. Earth had shown him its power. Now it was time to show the Empire that the galaxy had to respect it. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but wonder, if Earth was only the beginning, what other worlds lay hidden in the vastness of space, protected by ancient forces beyond comprehension? And what would happen when the galaxy's thirst for conquest met these guardians? Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The Vaxar Council was a towering structure, its walls lined with the faces of their greatest leaders. It was here, in this cold, imposing room, that the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Nixon entered the council hall with his crew behind him, each member carrying the weight of their mission. The council's vast, holographic screens flickered to life as they approached. The room buzzed with voices, each representative from a different planet offering their input on the growing tensions in the galaxy. The council's chair, a towering figure made of shifting dark matter, spoke first. Captain Nixon, report on your findings regarding Earth. Do not spare us the details. Nixon stepped forward, his stance resolute. What we encountered on Earth was unlike anything we've faced before. The planet is defended by forces that transcend technology and weapons. Earth is not vulnerable. It is protected by ancient beings, guardians who have existed for eons. A murmur swept through the room, and the representatives exchanged skeptical glances. Guardians? One of the counselors scoffed. You're telling us that a primitive planet has the power to resist the might of the Vaxar. It's true, Nixun said firmly. Earth's power is not of this galaxy. It is older, far older, than any of us can comprehend. And if we attempt to conquer it again, we will fail, just as we did. The chair's voice rumbled, its tone both cold and calculating. So, you propose that we simply leave Earth alone, then? Nixun nodded. I don't think we have a choice. The Guardians of Earth are watching, and they will not allow anyone to harm the planet. A long silence followed. The counselors were not accustomed to hearing such words from one of their greatest captains. The concept of surrendering a world like Earth was unimaginable. But Nixun had seen the truth, and he was not going to let his people repeat the same mistakes. This is not just about Earth, Nixun continued. If we continue down this path of conquest, we risk awakening something far greater. Earth is but the first world we've encountered that holds such power. There may be more, and if we keep pushing, we will face a reckoning. The galaxy is not ours to dominate. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling on the council like a thick fog. They had known nothing of this. They had lived their lives assuming that they were the apex predators of the universe. But now, for the first time, they realized that they might not be. Finally, the chair spoke again, its voice laden with foreboding. Very well, Captain Nixon. We will take your warning into consideration. But remember this. The Vaxar Empire does not bow to threats. It conquers. And if Earth is part of something greater, we will find it. We will not be stopped. Nixon bowed his head, his eyes narrowing with a quiet resolve. Then you will learn what I have learned, that some forces are beyond the reach of even the most powerful empire. Earth will always be protected. As he turned and left the council chamber, Nixon's heart weighed heavy with the knowledge that the galaxy had changed. The Vaxar were no longer the only ones in control. There were powers, ancient and vast, that watched from the shadows, and now the galaxy would have to learn to respect them, or face the consequences. As the doors to the council chamber closed behind him, Nixon realized the truth. Earth was just the beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same again.